Uh, 13 will be uh, Ford Explorers, which is a car that we bought in 2015 and 2017, all-wheel drive. They're fully equipped with the equipment needed to do anything. They have the computers in it, the radios, e-ticket readers, even they even come with radars. The price of the cars I can't get into. I don't know exactly the total price of them or the financing of them, but I do know this. At the end of last year or the middle of last year during COVID, a number of police departments could not or did not or weren't able to fulfill their obligations to purchase these cars from a dealership at the time, which was Lakeshore Ford. As you know, or maybe you don't, that vehicle squad vehicles, whether it's the Explorers, the F-150, or the Tauruses, if they're police packaged, they're specially made doing a special run at Ford. They're only made during a 2 month period. And last year, because of COVID, that run began. And when COVID began, that initial manufacturing process shut down. A number of municipalities, towns could no longer either make the investment in them or some just wanted to wait. Therefore, Lakeshore Ford had a number of vehicles that were available that we sorely needed. And the reason we need them so sorely is because as of right now, we still have about 50 Crown Victorias in our fleet. Crown Victorias have not been manufactured in the United States since 2011, and ours are 2010s. So our goal is to get all of those vehicles out of our fleet because it costs us a lot of money to maintain them, to repair them. You can repair an 11-year-old vehicle with a major repair today, and you'll have a major repair tomorrow. Those vehicles were available, and so we jumped on to buy them, and we were able to. The reason I think that we were able to buy them uh, as we did is for one reason and one reason only. As of this month, we've made our last payment on the 2017 purchases that we made of the 50 that we made at that time, which we had a package and we bought all of them. I signed off on that $300,000 payment just last week, and it will be submitted, and then we will have another amount of credit with Ford. So we do plan to actually purchase more vehicles with our credit to bring our fleet up to date and to get all the old vehicles out of it. My understanding is that this new purchase and what we plan to do is take that process through the state QPA, which was extended because of COVID last year. The state QPA prices and everything, they didn't go through. Nobody was buying cars last year. Cars weren't available, but they will be this year. And we will start that process, bid on them, use the state QPA to purchase the vehicles and build them to our needs. We have 5 Ford F-150 police package interceptors in this purchase too. We're going to use those with our traffic division, probably our beach patrol, and other divisions that have the need for the capability of the four-wheel drive and have the need to be able to get around in inclement weather. Weather like today, when we have a lot of accidents, a lot of bad accidents, a lot of bad roads, they're going to need as much capability as they can. And pickup trucks are a thing that a lot of departments are going to. Of the vehicles, we only have two with us. The others are in the process of getting either their computers installed or other equipment. I went to the dealership the other day and they were not ordered with running boards, the Ford trucks. Very dangerous. I myself, who was height challenged, would fall and hurt myself getting in and out of that vehicle. So I told them to purchase the running boards and to install those because I just truly believe it's a safety issue for an officer, and we would have an officer off injured if he didn't have that. So those vehicles are in process of being finished, and then they will be delivered to us. Our plan is to put every last one of those vehicles in some form of uniform services. They will be in our patrol division, in our traffic division, and visible. They will be marked, they will be visible, and they will be on the street. They are not going to be in anybody's in special details, anybody on a special assignment, anybody in the detective bureau. That is not what these vehicles for. These vehicles' sole purpose are to be visible in our community and to be utilized to get those Crown Vics out of the fleet. I can't stress enough how much those Crown Vics cost us to repair and to maintain. If it wasn't for the council's gracious ordinance that we had a few years ago to give us the 254 non-reverting fund, we wouldn't be able to maintain our fleet. We spend a ton of money trying to repair transmissions and tires on vehicles that are just very old. And this is not a new phenomenon. We've had these vehicles since 2010, and You know, as you know, sometimes we have challenges and we're not able to get them. The numbers that are on the vehicles, which I know is a
Can I ask a
question.
question before you go
Yes, sir.
into that? So
Yes,
I want
sir.
to make sure that for the public and us, that we have a good information flow, because sometimes it kind of goes on and then can't really be clear about what the answer
Stop me when you want to. My daddy was a preacher. I keep going.
is. You know, Councilman Brewer goes to those churches where they say, stop right there, stop right there. And then they expound on it. But let me ask you this, and I think Attorney Colvin can help. I think part of the question was the cost of these vehicles that were ordered. And there were, to my clarification, 13 vehicles,
13.
13 and additional 5. Yeah.
so 18 in total.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how much did we pay for the 13 vehicles or the 18 vehicles?
The price is about $59,000,
So we
which
paid,
is about, which, I'm sorry,
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
which is about, I'll say $10,000 more than we would have paid on the state QPA. And while this price is higher than we would normally have paid, given that we didn't have any cars at all and wouldn't have any opportunity for almost a year, that's why we thought it would be good. As long as we had an opportunity to actually go back and get most of our cars at the QPA price, which is what we intend to do.
So we have the trucks and the SUVs would cost the same amount?
Let me see. No, they have two different prices. One is 59 and one is 51.
Okay, so I'm assuming the SUVs are 51?
Yes.
Okay.
Labeling.
Now, I had heard, and I'm no expert in vehicle purchasing, that the last time we ordered these vehicles, that we were talking numbers in the high 30s. Now, I know there's this thing called inflation. I believe the last time we ordered vehicles was roughly 5 to 10 years ago, roughly.
Something like that, I think.
Okay, so is that true, that roughly we were spending somewhere between $37,000 and $42,000 per vehicle?
I don't know for a fact, but I believe, based on information that I have received, it might have been in the low 40s.
Let me explain
But
one thing.
I think that the chief can explain better.
Also, for clarity, during our last purchase, which was in 2017, you're correct. The vehicles cost around that amount, about $37,000, $38,000, but they did not come with any equipment, meaning that the department had to have a separate PO to put on the emergency equipment, which are your lights and sirens, your MDT, which is a computer, as well as a radio. The cars that we have now are complete. Everything, all that's in them. It is more. And it is more because the lights came on them from the factory. The factory contract with Ford is Wayland, very expensive. So even without that price, if we would have purchased them at state QPA, we would still need to invest a few more $100,000 in the vehicle to equip each with a computer, which you have to have, a radio, and the lights and sirens.
So the computer
and radar.
And these cars have radar and e-ticket. They do have additional pieces of equipment.
Wait. One person at a time, please. Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, these vehicles also have radar, front and rear, and an e-ticket. The e-ticket is something that was not included in the last purchase in 2017 at all. But each one of these vehicles has that.
So can you so we're saying it was roughly $37,000 to $40,000 at a base cost. And
Yes.
Then we had to add the computers, the radio, the radar, the lights, the siren, and the e-ticketing capabilities. Those 6 elements or 5 elements, how much did that collectively cost? Or what's the value for those add-ons?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. This is Eric Reeves. I just got on the call. So what we did was I asked the police department to give us a request of the equipment that they spec'd from Motorola, and I sent it to a local dealer. That's what added the amount to the cars. So each car with all that equipment, I believe it came out to about $15,000 of equipment per car. That's all the extra lights, sirens, radio, e-ticket, front and rear radar, and stuff. I definitely can give you a breakdown so you know. And I did it that way. But we did say, I can say that over Motorola, not using Wayland and some of the other top, brands, but equivalent, we saved $25,000 on equipment for those cars, those set of cars.
So I guess what I want to know historically is what did it cost us 10 years ago, right? Let me just give you a background, right? So my understanding is that we spent too much money.
So, Mr. President, I want to have clear understanding. So, Mr. Reed, you ordered the cars and the department manager over at General Service? Because we normally have a person out of the department that orders the cars. So I want to be clear before we continue on. Who ordered what?
So let me tell you how this came about. So during COVID, and when the mayor took office, there was a dearth of cars. We couldn't get a car for the mayor's detail. There was no cars available. So we did buy. This is separate. We bought 2 cars. At that time, Ford said to me, "Hey, because of COVID, we've shut down, but I have X amount of cars coming in." And Colonel Ligon, with the previous chief, said, "I need some cars." So I was working, trying to identify how we could pay for cars. He said we need about 53.
So before you move on, Mr. Reed, so you saying that the previous mayor detail didn't have any cars, so when you all walked in, there was no cars for you all to use. I want to make sure I'm clear on this.
For the mayor's detail, there was
Correct.
a GMC that we had to immediately put $20,000 worth of work in. $20,000 worth of work. That's the GMC Yukon that kept stopping, that now has that work. We had a Durango, which we put a new motor in. That's all we've had. And then in calling to get enough cars for the mayor's detail, for the officers who are going to work in the mayor's detail, they gave us an old brown Crown Victoria. And so it was very difficult for the first 2 to 3 months in trying to equip officers with cars. I'm just going to be very honest with you. So that's why.
Mr. Chair, can we get clear? How many cars are in the mayor detail? And wasn't that the Yukon that was previously used? What year was that Yukon? That seems like an excessive amount to put in a $20,000 into a car.
You're right. It is an excessive amount.
So can you answer the first one first, Mr. Reed?
Yeah.
How many cars are in the mayor's detail?
There's 2 cars. Right now, there's 2 cars because we moved the one that I referenced, the Dodge Durango, to Parks now. But there's 2 cars.
I just quickly, so I thought there were 3 vehicles. I thought there was the former mayor's Yukon, the new Expedition, and the new Explorer. Is that incorrect?
You know what? I did forget about the Explorer. I apologize. There are 3 cars. That is correct. Thank you.
Okay.
So this Explorer, Yukon, and the Expedition. That is correct.
So the Yukon, as my recollection is, how old is that car? Because I do know the mayor used to have the former.
That is that's a 17.
So there's no warranty that would have covered the work that you all had done on that vehicle at the time?
The warranty was out at 99,000. That car has over 100,000 miles. We were able to get $5,000 worth of warranty work we made it by 1 day.
3 years? Wow.
Yes. I'm telling you, I got the bills. I'm just telling you the truth. I was in disbelief.
Well, I'm not discrediting that the miles.
Yeah.
Because I know the mayor made a lot of trips up and down around. So I'm not discrediting the miles that's on there, not at all.
There just wasn't any council woman and people chair. There just weren't any. It wasn't any maintenance done on that Yukon. I mean, we replaced brakes, tires. We had to put a new transmission in it. So it's all a matter of record. Scapel has a matter of record, and I kept copious notes so I could answer this at some time.
But my thing is, even if you did have to put a new transmission or motor in the car, it's a 2017. It's a brand new vehicle. If you had to put tires on, I mean, we're talking about highway miles here that was put on a 2017, and we're just now inside of 21. And we go out and purchase another brand new vehicle when we know there already is an issue of vehicles that's needed in the police department.
So that's where I was coming to. So
Okay.
at that time, so the car kept breaking. I ended up having to rent cars in the summertime for 2 months because we didn't have cars. So understanding that, so I told Colonel Ligon or Chief Ligon, I would try to find some cars. There weren't any cars in America because Ford had shut down, but they had some coming in. So I identified those. He said, I have 5 F-150s, which we had never bought, but I said, hey, let's get those. And I asked Chief Ligon at the time. He said, yep, I'll take that. And there was, I believe, 13 additional Explorers. And he said, okay, I'll take those. So some were 2020s. And by the time they ended COVID, they stopped producing cars in May, I believe, to tool up for the next year. So they had produced some for 2020, and we got some 2021s. After the new chief came into office, Chief Evans, I met with him and said, this is what we have here. So that's how I ended up from my operational hat on in the city and working with automobiles and having a background in fleet management. I procured those cars because we didn't have to put any money down, no nothing. I just told them when the cars come in, I want them because nobody else could get cars in America. Those 150s, no other municipality will be able to get a 150 till 2022.
So
I was just gonna share. Thank you. Just so since Mr. Reeves is explaining his procurement process. So I'm not well versed on the statute, but I thought that there was a compliance that was required for us to have a certain amount of quotes to purchase at certain thresholds. So didn't we have to acquire at least 3 quotes? And you mentioned someone specifically said they were getting cars, and so you decided to purchase those cars from he. So I'm assuming it's a dealer. So did we make sure that we followed the appropriate procurement process to secure those?
Yes, the 150s were not in the QPA, and the QPA ended in February of 2021 for the other cars.
So even if it's outside of the QPA,
2020,
you have to obtain 3 quotes due to the price amount of the purchase?
If it's out of the QPA, and then some dealers do not deal in fleet police cars. Not all dealers do that.
So no, we didn't get 3 quotes for this purchase.
For the police cars?
Yeah, for whoever, yeah.
So just let me say, I got 3 quotes for the mayor's detail cars that we bought, the Expedition and the Explorer. For the F-150s and the Explorers, I followed the QPA price that had expired in the state. So I did not get quotes in the QPA. So I didn't send it out to quote, but I identified and mirrored the price that we would pay in QPA.
I thought, Chief, I just want to make sure I understand. So I thought Chief Evans stated that our purchase price for the 18, which encompasses the 5 trucks and then the 13 units or cars, was approximately $10,000 more than the QPA.
That's not my records. I understand he said that, but that's not. We didn't pay $10,000 over. And there's some, maybe I need to get with him to show him the records again. But we did not, to my knowledge, that's just been a rumor that we were $10,000 over.
Well, it wouldn't be a rumor if the chief has to sign off on it, correct?
Sign off on what? On
the purchase. We're not talking about rumor. We're talking about department heads in the room making decisions and signing off on things of this nature here. We're talking about $300,000. I would think the chief would have to sign off, and the chief should know exactly how much that price was. I wouldn't see how that could be a mistake.
Mr. President, am I on? mute.
Yes, you're on.
You may, and maybe I kind of confused things, but at one point I was asked the question, how much more were the cars from before the last time we purchased? And I remember saying $10,000 then.
No, I thought that Chief,
No.
and Chief Evans, correct me if I'm wrong. It wasn't you, Attorney Colvin.
Trying to clarify.
No, I'm not sure of what the overage is between the last cars and this one. I do know that these cars do come with a lot of equipment already installed. I don't know what the breakdown of that is. I didn't say that, but if I did say it, I didn't mean to mislead you. These cars cost whatever they cost, but they came fully equipped, whereas our cars in 2017, we had to equip them after they arrived. And I do know that some of the bump in price did come from, you can purchase police cars in a lot of different ways. We've done it every way possible. You can purchase them with the base equipment on at the factory at Ford, which is how these vehicles were, because whoever ordered them at first, that's how they were ordered, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And we had to go with that price. Like I said, Wayland, if they're installed by Ford, they have an exclusive contract, that's a little bit more. They're very good equipment, but I don't know exactly what it is. As far as price, that will be something we have to break down.
Okay, I'm clear. I'm sorry about that.
Mr. Chair,
President
let me
Gao.
just ask a series of very direct questions, and I think that may help with our clarity. So earlier you stated, I think Chief Evans, that and maybe you, Attorney Colvin, that the SUVs were $51,000 roughly, and that the 5 trucks were $59,000 each. Is that true, Attorney Colvin? Is that true, Mr. Reeves?
And I was trying to find my invoices while we're here. So you can,
Oh.
you can go to your next point. I'll see if I can put it up.
Okay, and Mr. Reeves, is that your understanding?
You know what? I don't have the exact price here. I can go to my invoices also. I don't think, but I think that one was about 53, but that's all equipped. You have to understand that please don't make it's a difference if you're trying to talk about just a raw vehicle. These have everything in them and they're ready to go.
Okay, so what I was asking earlier before we went to a different direction is I was trying to compare what we spent in 2017. I misspoke when I said 5 to 10 years ago, because I guess there were purchases in 2017. There were purchases in 2020. I understand inflation. I also understand base price and fully loaded. So Chief Evans, you were the deputy chief at that time, which means you were over administrative functions. Is that correct?
What time, sir? At what point?
The last time vehicles were ordered?
Actually, I was not over.
Okay.
I was the commander at the time. That was in 2017.
Okay. Are you aware of what the vehicles cost, the SUVs, because that's what we want to compare apples and apples, what the SUVs cost base and fully loaded for 2017?
I can just guesstimate that they were in the 30s, probably in the high 30s, base price with nothing on them. And I don't know what our cost was with them fully loaded, because that was a separate purchase. So at that time, I do know that we had a separate process, a separate purchase. When they came in, they had to be actually put together at, I think, Tri-Electronics at that time.
So I'll be generous. I'll say they cost you $40,000 in 2017, right? Even though you're saying mid-30s, that's base. If you add, I'll use your $15,000 number, but I don't think we had as much stuff in it. That's $55,000, right? And I'm being generous. It's probably closer to 50. If we're saying that we spent 51,000 on these same types of vehicles, then it would be the same. But I guess the question is, how much did the equipment cost? Right? Because it would be, if you say 35 plus 10, that's 45. Do we know what the add-on equipment costs were in 2017?
No, I can get that number, and I can tell you the equipment was, I said, radio, computer stand, and lights and sirens. No radar, no e-ticket reader.
Okay. Chief Evans, Attorney Colvin, Councilman Atkins asked, and Mr. Reeves asked, was there a bidding process? And so I will ask each of you, is a bidding process required for these types of purchases, yes or no?
Yes, a bid process is necessary. However, given that there were no cars available
Right.
for us to actually purchase, and given that we were able to get the cars at the same rate as the existing QPA that was out at the time, we felt we had fulfilled the purchasing requirements.
So it either is or it isn't. I
I
understand.
said yes.
Okay, so it is. So is that when the audit is done for 2020, right, by the State Board of Accounts in 2021, are we out of compliance in terms of not having had a bidding process?
I don't believe that we will be.
And that is because of extraordinary circumstances.
Yes.
Okay.
In the normal course of things, this would not be the way, but under these circumstances, I think we will be in compliance.
Okay. In terms of the detail, now I've heard multiple things. That 2 of these vehicles have in fact been assigned to folks who, either part-time, full-time, some of the time, are associated with the mayor's detail. Is that the case or is it not the case? And I'll direct this to Chief Evans, since he's over police department and would know where various folks are and the vehicles that they are operating.
I'm very sorry. I had to take a call. Please repeat the question for me.
Is all of the 18 vehicles that were ordered, is one of them in any way associated with anyone who is in any way associated with the mayor's detail?
No. The mayor's detail personnel picked one of the vehicles up. That vehicle is at the garage and is in the process of having a license plate reader system put on it, and that vehicle will go into the fleet.
So Mr. Boldy does not have one of these vehicles?
No, sir. Mr. Boldy, nor Mr. Dotson, nor the other 2 officers. None of them have a new vehicle.
So let me just ask really quickly while we're on this, how many officers, I don't care if they're reserved, full-time, et cetera, are assigned, you don't have a problem with that, so that's nothing new, are assigned to the mayor's detail?
I have 2 sworn officers assigned to the mayor's detail. They also do security at City Hall. Well, secure City Hall. I hate calling police security. They're Officer Boldy and Officer Dotson. No secret about that. Officer Marrero is considered what you call a special police officer, a dispensation that you can hire someone for doing that. And Officer Tolliver who was a reserve officer, is also now employed as a special police officer for the mayor's detail.
So that's 4 personnel, right, who are part of the mayor's detail?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that normal with past practice? So you were deputy chief in 2019. Did we have 4 people similarly attached to the mayor's detail?
We had 3. We had Edwards, Officer Sean Jones, and Officer Sinclair Harley.
And there were how many vehicles?
The 3 vehicles went with them.
Okay. The Yukon and the old Crown Victoria that Sean drove or drives, and
Edwards had the Crown Victoria also.
So the Yukon was never assigned to an officer. That is always assigned to the mayor, the one that you speak about. That wasn't considered. It was in our fleet, but that stayed with her. Our officers drove the Crown Vics or the vehicles they were assigned back and forth to do whatever. And they all lived in the city, so they had take-home cars.
And the Yukon that you speak of, was that a police vehicle? It had police license plates, as I recall?
Yes, sir.
And the current Yukon continues to have police plates, right?
Yes, sir.
And the Expedition that was just purchased, is it a police vehicle?
We didn't purchase it, and I don't think we didn't plate it. So
does it have lights and sirens and other capabilities?
I really don't know.
I've seen lights on it. So, I mean, so it has police paraphernalia, probably a better word.
Mhm.
It does.
I don't know. To be perfectly honest, I don't know what's on it. I didn't sign off on anything, and I wasn't involved in the purchasing of it. And I've only seen it parked at City Hall.
So police officers under your charge drive it, correct?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
if a police officer is driving the vehicle, it should have police capability, right?
It can. Yes, sir. I wouldn't expect them to do police work in that vehicle, but yes, it can. That's traditional for mayors across the country.
Right.
They have to get through traffic or whatever. Go down.
Okay. Yeah, I saw Mr. Marrero yesterday. I was out at the county building toward the end of the day. Lastly, it was mentioned that the vehicles were not maintained. The Yukon was not properly maintained. Who was responsible for making sure that that vehicle was maintained before it was transferred to Mayor Prince?
Is that for me, sir?
Yes.
So I would say not maintain is, I know what that was said, but I will stress that that vehicle, when given, had a lot of miles on it. A lot of miles on it. In fact, that we had purchased a vehicle just a few years before that, and that vehicle was at the fire department, similar to that. I think the vehicle just had too many miles, has a lot of miles on it. And that's the issue with maintenance with that vehicle, is that it's high mileage. It probably was out of warranty at the beginning of 2020. So I know it had well over 85 or 90,000 miles on it.
Well, I know a lot of our police cars have 150,000 miles or more.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think my vehicle has over 150,000 miles.
But to your question, we repair those at the garage. If it can't be repaired there, we have to send them out. That vehicle goes to Sheppel. Some things our garage mechanics aren't capable of doing or don't have the tools. Let me just say that. And so we outsource that, and that comes out of our budget.
So this one last question. The vehicles that were purchased, Mr. Reeves, my neighbor, colleague, were you consulted in this purchasing process? Obviously, you would know a lot about police vehicles, and you were deputy chief at the time and what they would require. Were you part of that planning process and purchasing process?
After Chief Liggins left is when Mr. Reeves and I began talking, and the purchase was already in process.
So Chief Liggins was a part of it.
I believe so, sir. I can't say for certain, but I believe so.
But I can answer some of that. I consulted the police department at every juncture. That package that's in the car came from Officer Titus. So, or Commander Titus. It was not done independently or in a silo. Every single thing was consulted with somebody within the Gary City Police Department. Was not a roll call. And as soon as Chief Evans became chief, I started dialogue with him. There's no gotcha here.
And I'm not looking to do gotcha. Was Commander Colbert, was he involved at all in this? I think Chip, isn't he traditionally the one who deals with vehicles, Chief Evans?
So Commander Coleman does our fleet. Commander Titus does our technology. Both of them, I'm not sure the extent of what their involvement was. I do know that we did provide lists to Mr. Reeves about the equipment and that should go in the vehicles based upon what we have and what we would utilize as police departments. So both of them, with definitely vehicles is Commander Colbert, absolutely. Technology, computers, things like that are Commander Titus.
They were consulted. They were consulted. Yes.
Okay. So that's all my questions for now.
I have a question. Why were they consulted and not allowed to do what they're supposed to do? Mr. Reeves, why did you put your input in it? You know, I mean no harm. You wear a lot of hats, and we need to do what we're supposed to do. Now, if Colbert and Titus are supposed to handle that, why didn't you let them handle it?
It's not a matter of letting them handle it. I had to, again, the way I explained it, the cars were available. I had to say yay or nay. Would we take the cars? You know, because the country did not have any. Also, the administration is trying to go to a central procurement. Part of that function is trying to get move towards central procurement, so everybody's just not spending money haphazardly. So you know, it's a central point of spend and engagement. So that is why I took it up. It's not so, trust me, I've spent hours on this, and if I had my proclivity.
I know, but I want to know why you thought that you was just the perfect person. This is my thing, that every time I keep looking at something, that this person is supposed, this is their job, this is their assignment, this is what they've been doing, and now you come along and then you jump in and you take it over because see, you don't have the skills, you don't know better than I know. That's that's what I keep seeing, and
Well,
I hate that I keep seeing that.
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell, that's not it. It's
That's how I perceive it. Yes. I'm
well,
sorry.
okay, I understand that's not how you perceive it, but I guess I'm going to say how it is. When in any change, sometimes processes and procedures can change for the better. Currently, we don't have it. This city does not have a control on things being purchased.
Because we
Today,
didn't go through the bid process like we were supposed to. We normally go do a bid process. Because of COVID, we didn't do it. But still,
there was no cars to bid upon. Only this place had the cars. That's what we said. There were some extenuating
Mr. Chair,
circumstances.
I'm going to ask you to chair if you could.
Yes.
I feel that Mr. Reeves is just talking, as he wants. So I have two questions, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Ask me.
So my first question is, are you now over procurement for the city of Gary, Mr. Reeves?
I'm not over procurement.
Are you managing the centralized procurement effort?
No.
Okay. And my next question is, how did you find out, or how were you notified about the availability of these specific cars that were only available in the U.S.?
As I told you, when I purchased the two cars for the mayor's detail, the Expedition and the Explorer, I was told by Ford, hey, that we don't have, and I had already had a meeting with them in January that the city needed cars based on a request by Chief Ligon.
So let me be more specific. You were told by Ford. So is this Ford corporate or is this a Ford location locally?
The Ford dealer.
Where?
In Burns Harbor, Lakeshore Ford.
So Lakeshore Ford, Burns Harbor was able to acquire all of the fleet that was purchased by the city of Gary.
Correct.
And no other dealer was able to do that.
They had not ordered them, and all the dealers do not deal in police cars, fleets. They do not. All the dealers.
So I'm clear because I've actually managed fleet management in corporate America. So I'm clear. So we can speak the same language. I understand that.
Okay.
So that's why I'm asking those questions.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can I ask a follow-up, Councilman Atkins?
Yes.
So what other Ford dealerships were engaged in this process? I know Lakeshore Ford is not the only Ford dealer in the region.
Art Hill and Webb.
Okay. And you're saying that Art Hill, Webb, and Lakeshore were given the opportunity to hear our needs, and that they in turn offered a proposal in terms of the cost and the equipment and time of delivery, et cetera, et cetera.
No, I didn't say that. I originally, when I bought the cars for the mayor's detail, I inquired as if, do you sell fleet police cars? Art Hill says we do not do that. We could sell you Explorers and then you'd have to order them outfitted. But right now we can't get any. Webb was the same way. You have to understand that you're in the cars that we purchased were already in a process to go to Lakeshore. They had spoken for some cars. These cars were not available to other dealers. That's the salient point. They were not available to other dealers.
So only Lakeshore had access to these vehicles. Now,
at that time.
Okay, and we couldn't go directly to Ford.
No.
And why is that?
Because they don't do business that way. You have to go through a dealer.
Now, have we always, Chief Evans, ordered our vehicles directly from dealers? You're muted.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. My IT personnel, my 16-year-old daughter's my IT professional. And I don't have her with me.
I got one too.
So when it comes to purchasing vehicles, if you go through the state QPA, and Mr. Reeves is right, every vehicle, every fleet, every dealership doesn't deal in police vehicles. Another point is they're only made at a certain point of the year, which begins usually in February. They run through May, and that's it. If you don't get your order in, you won't get them. And you have to go, if you go through the state QPA, you can select where you want them delivered, and the state buys them and delivers them to where you will have your final equipment put on.
So when the state buys them, from whom do they buy them?
Various dealers throughout the state. And I couldn't tell you who they are off the top of my head. The last time we bought with them, we had to go to Indianapolis and pick them up.
So just for my edification, and I think it was stated earlier, just to be clear, why did we not use the state QPA this time? February is pre-COVID, so we weren't totally in chaos yet. So what was the reason?
QPA had closed.
When did QPA close?
First of all, the 150s were never on the QPA. For the other, it closed in February.
Why did it close in February?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the state.
So when you say they closed, what does that mean? That means they wouldn't take any more orders from municipalities?
The availability to order through the QPA for those cars, you could not do it.
After the end of February?
Yes, sometime in February, that is correct.
So when did our ordering process start?
I don't recall. I don't have the exact, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman
Weatherspoon.
Councilman Weatherspoon, please go ahead. And let me ask if everyone could turn their cameras on. I'm getting a lot of calls about that. So if everyone, especially Mr. Reeves, if you could turn your camera on, you're speaking quite a bit there, and it's good for the public to see who's talking.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn my camera on just 1 second after I make this statement. You know, back February was pre-COVID, all right? To an extent it was. But being in the industry that I am in, I am fully aware of the fact that Ford Motor Company basically shut down, okay, because it affected various industries. The steel industry went down simply because of this. It all started in February and March. There were a lot of people that were laid off. And as a matter of fact, this plant right here in Lansing, Indiana, right across the road here, was totally shut down. So, you know, I can verify that there were issues in that industry as it relates to the manufacturing of vehicles. Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up.
Councilman Goblin.
So, okay, so just to be clear, we're saying the state of Indiana shut down its QPA at the end of February. And we engaged the state at what point?
At the time that sometime in February, when I was going to order, when I found that there was cars available, and I said, well, you know, we generally go through the QPA. So, you know, I need to check the price to make sure that we're going to pay the same QPA price.
So you reached out to the QPA in writing, I suppose, or over the phone told you, we can't serve you, we can't help you.
No, you can go on there, you can go online and see, you can see the dates that they open and close.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Reed, I'm going to ask if you continue to speak, if you could turn your camera on.
You know what, but okay, I can try to do that, but I'm not really dressed nicely, you know, this is after business hours, so.
Well, this was a scheduled.
Scrubs on.
This is a meeting that's done in the
I
public.
got it, but you know what, I'm just telling you.
Mr. Laird's not looking the best, but he's here today. And I'm happy to see him. My buddy,
Right.
you know,
No
yes.
problem.
Compared to the crowd that's on here, I'm always stressed. Let me also become part of this. You're using the wrong date for COVID. COVID was actually identified in December 2019. I mean, it was clearly, I'm talking like Donald Trump now. It clearly was known in January of 2019. So I'm going to help Mr. Reeves here, although he, along with Mr. Goblin, accused me of calling him my name. But anyway, so no, it was there. So I could understand why they've shut down, because it actually, the World Health Organization said it started in December 2019.
Correct.
And even the United States, I think it occurred here. I believe it's in California in January. of 2019. So that could have been the reason they were shutting down too.
I only mentioned that because I didn't recall them shutting down in February in terms of Ford. I know we were talking about it, was in the media, but it was sort of around early to mid-March is when I started to hear about major companies, stopping their productions. But that's the only reason why I use the March data point.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we just ask for the invoice of these various vehicles? Then it would tell you exactly what the base price was and what the optional, I'm going to call it optional equipment for the lack of a better word, that's on these vehicles. That would be the easiest way.
Councilman, that's a good point, and I will request that the invoice be provided to this body of the proposals of the vehicles, well, the invoices at this time. My question.
And can I just add that we want them for 2017 and this
the
year?
Comparisons.
Right. So both years. Attorney Colvin, are you, or can we ask you, when the mayor isn't on, but can we ask you as chief of staff to provide that information?
You say you want it from 2017 as well? Is that what you're saying?
Comparatively. So what we're trying, here's the deal, right? The accusation, I'm not saying it's true, but the accusation is that we spent too much and we didn't follow the proper protocols, right? So to clarify the accusation, Councilman Lay makes the wise suggestion that we simply look at the invoices between ordering in 2017 and ordering in 2020, and then it will be apparent whether we pay more, understanding inflation and so forth, and maybe the additional optional equipment that was part of it.
Okay.
Now, Councilman Lay is going to say that we must put that in writing and address it to the mayor. And so I
told you, I don't care if you use a carrier pigeon. But let me say exactly what I said now. In other words, assuming that there was a restriction on where you could acquire the vehicle, that would be one of the reasons. And I handle floor plans into the millions of dollars of automobiles because I was vice president of a bank before I was an attorney. That if he has a restriction that he can only get it from one location, then he certainly may be a victim of the price at that location.
That's true.
I would assume in 2017, the market was much broader. So again, if it was the only source, and that's what I keep hearing, it was the only source when he got these vehicles, therefore he was at a handicap here. He had to take them that way and not take them at all. But let me clear up just one other point. The only time I think the mayor should be asked questions when the question is for the mayor. And again, I don't hold him in no special esteem. I mean, you can ask anybody, but they probably don't know the answer to the question. So that's why. So I don't know about 2017. I'm sure Attorney Williams can attest to this. My Range Rover was way cheaper than his Range Rover. But I had the Range Rover at the time. I mean, the supercharge and all this came out later, special wheels. So I'm not sure you can even go back. It seems like it's an earlier point in time, but I remember when a Mercedes cost $7,100. The Rolls Royce cost $27,000. Today they're $300,000. So I'm not sure how you can make that comparison, but we have to establish he had another source is where I would have a problem if there was a second source that would have been competitive. But if it's only one source, there's no way you can bid it either. And I agree, you can't go directly to Ford Motor Company.
So,
they can't.
Councilman Lay, let me go to this point here. So we're declared that there was an emergency of shortage of vehicles and things of this nature. And I've been dealing with the police department and knowing what this fleet is looking like for quite a while. Why we did not do a recall of take-home vehicles if there was such emergency shortage? And I say that because if the city is in a so-called, we always say a broke state and we're watching a penny, and while we pay over $10,000 to $15,000, quote unquote, more at this time, why not recall those vehicles back until things lift and where we can go underneath the QPA at that time?
We did that.
We did that
recall of take-home vehicles to get our officers out of the vehicles that were doubling up And we have take-home vehicles, not just because officers live in the city and it's a benefit, but many officers, most of them do double duties. Officer may be on SWAT. Can't wait for him to come get a vehicle with equipment. Officers in K9. An officer may be assigned a homicide or another on-call entity, and that's why they have the take-home cars. But as it relates to our vehicles, Councilman, we did do a recall and a take-back of take-home vehicles to try to keep our officers in vehicles and keep them safe. We did that as best we could. We also took 11 people from inside the Detective Bureau and put them back on the street to shore up our numbers outside. We did that toward the fall. So both of those measures were taken in order to try to mitigate some of our shortfalls. But we're at the point now where that's a Band-Aid. You know, with 50 Crown Vics in the fleet, we just have to have vehicles. And like I say, I reiterate, they're 2010s.
And if I could make a point, as Councilman Lay said, comparing a 2017 to a 20 or 21, that's a 3 and 4 year difference in cars is like apples and oranges. I don't even know how you can make the comparison.
Well, let me say this real quickly. I'm gonna mess with you, Mr. Reeves, because
okay, go ahead.
We used appraisals for the Genesis building from 2017 and 2018 for a 2020 sale, right? So I had to get you on that, which I had an issue with. We'll be discussing that next week. But I think the issue is, I agree, right, that you will have inflation. And obviously, if there's a competitive advantage, if you're the only game in town for where the purchases them, then you have a monopoly. So you can charge more. I think it's a difference in degree and kind, right? So if you're the only game in town, there's only to a limit of how much you're going to charge, right? There's only so many. I don't know what other police departments were looking to make these orders, or who we may have been competing with to get these vehicles. But I think it's one thing if it's a 5%, 10%, 15% increase. But if we're talking about, let's say base price of $35,000 to $37,000 in 2017, and now we're talking about a $45,000 to $50,000 base price. I think that's noteworthy, right? It's not a small number. Now I understand that the Ford plant shut down on March 18th, 2020. And it seems to me if we were engaging the QPA in mid-February, that we were already well in the process before the shutdown happened. So,
but that's not the way it works. You have to, these cars, it's almost a 3-month process to get cars that, especially police vehicles, to get in a line for police cars. It's not, you just can't roll up and say, I want a car. They have to be, a dealer would have had to order this car or have it in their process and coming to them way before the beginning of the year. So it's not just cut and dry.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm sorry to interrupt. So if we're saying it's a multi-month process, right? And Councilman Lay said COVID began in December, and I agree with him. We didn't react to it until February, really, or March as a country. But if it's a multi-month process, then theoretically, even before December, right, the various dealerships would have already put in their orders, such that by February and March or April or so on of 2020, COVID would have been irrelevant. Now, I guess if we're saying they put in the orders and the vehicles didn't show up, then that's another story, right?
No. So that's how we got vehicles. This dealer had ordered some, spec vehicles that they didn't have assigned. Okay. So they, the cars that we have were through this dealer and this dealer only. They said, hey, send me 5 F-150s. And that means to Ford, they're going to manufacture 5 F-150s, and then they assign them VIN numbers, and then they actually become a PO for them, and then they send them to that dealer. That's the same with the Explorers. It's not like you can just roll up for a dealer. So these cars, at the point where they say to me, I've got some police cars coming in, I had already talked to Chief Ligon, who said, listen, I need cars. If this administration went to every department and said, What do you need most? Ligon said, I need cars. So I went to Busy to try to get cars, trying to leverage relationships so this city could have police cars.
So Maryville also ordered cars, is that correct?
I don't
We
have
know that.
I don't have any idea.
So
And we don't.
If I may, just to add to the conversation, I swear I shut up. I was, as the deputy chief, involved with the attempt to purchase cars in 2019. And we have financial challenges and we could not secure credit to purchase new cars at that time because we had the 2020 payment yet to pay, as well as this year. And I believe maybe Ms. Coleman can quantify when we were able to get more credit from Ford. So we did try in 2019 to purchase cars, but there was a huge issue with financing the credit. I don't know what that all entailed. It entailed the finance department at the time, Whitaker and Whitaker, and a couple other people with us trying to get financing before the year began, and that was a failure.
If I can follow up on Chief Evans, we were not able to finance with Ford. And Ford first said they would finance at 3.5%, I believe it was, after forgiving a $12,500 late fee that I negotiated that they would take away. They said, okay, if you order more cars from Ford at some time, we'll erase the $12,500 late fee that we have on the books here, and we will, if you order some more cars. When we went to buy the cars, these ones in question, they said, no, we're not going to sell you any more cars because we don't right now, we don't believe you're a good credit risk. So I went out on the market to a different bank, again, leveraging relationships. And I believe we got the rate at 1.5 and we're able to order these cars. If it were not for that, we wouldn't have anything because Ford refused to do business with us. Enterprise refused to do business with us. You have to understand, I understand you guys' concern, but you're not talking about a city with AAA credit. You're talking, and for whatever reason, it's difficulty to even get somebody to extend us credit to buy a car. So getting these vehicles it was like when we got approved and I talked to Chief Evans and said, hey, I think there's a way we can get up to 53, that what number you want to get to. I was elated, and I think we should be elated for the citizens of Gary and the officers who put their lives on the line every day.
Mr. Reed, we'll get to that point. But what kind of funds did you get these funds out of for the payment of these cars? Where did you pull the funds from?
I would have to. No, we got the credit. I just said we were able to secure credit, and the bill is not due until June.
So where are you going to be making the payments from? From what? I mean, what funding source?
Chief of Staff Arlene Colvin can answer that, but I was given that we would spend $1.3 million between now and June for cars. So that's the ceilings of which I worked. I think it was 1 million in 2020, 300,000 in 2021. And then I told Chief Evans that because of certain economic development deals that we would be closing, that we wanted to allocate funds to other areas in the city, we could help buy cars from monies economic development so the police could have cars. So Attorney Colvin would have to answer where the money came from.
Attorney Colvin.
The payments are coming from the COIT money, the county income tax for public safety. There's an allocation set aside for lease payments, and it's coming from that money.
So wasn't the 2027 lease payments coming out of the same pot of funds?
The 2027 lease payments.
Yes, wasn't, because there was cars that was brought before.
For 2017?
Yes.
Oh, yes. But as Chief Evans just mentioned, they made the last payment today, I think. It was a 4-year deal.
Okay. So wasn't those
I'm sorry.
So I'm trying to figure out how do we get to a late payment if those was allocated funds coming directly out of the income tax fund?
I couldn't tell you how the late payment came up. I do know it existed because they contacted the finance department, but I don't know the circumstances surrounding it.
Okay. So if I can move a little bit further ahead with this, how did we get to the point of buying just cars and then we did all the lettering and all the equipment, everything all together? And when we have done it in previous years, when it has been done separately, I want to know, how do we get to that point, that decision being made?
Because if you do economies of scale, you can save more money. So that's how we came to that.
Well,
So,
I know if I buy rims from the dealership, they're gonna be a lot higher if I buy them from someone else. So I just want to know, you know.
but they didn't. But the equipment didn't come from the dealer.
Okay.
It came from Bartronics, and I said earlier that on the equipment package that Commander Titus gave me, we saved $25,000 on the aggregate of all equipment. So the sum total of all the equipment, we saved $25,000 for those cars and, you know, trucks. When I say cars and trucks, okay, and the lettering, we also saved money, and we had a team of people putting them on rather than one person operating. What I did was I said, "Who used to do these?" They gave me a name. How long did it take? 6 months. We needed to get cars on the street faster. Now, we were delayed about 2 months again because of equipment delays and again, COVID, because these cars really should have been on the street 2 months ago. But because of certain equipment that just didn't come in, we were delayed. But we've been writing that company, Bartronics, who put these lights in and gave us the quote that was $25,000 less to get them going.
So how did we get to the point, and to one of our main discussions too, to the initial JP being put on the car with some numbers? I have seen on previous cars that there's normally just numbers on the car, and that number basically stands for if someone sees something going on with a police car, they can just, you know, say that was car 11, get police car 11 that went through. How did we get to the point where we actually put the mayor's initials on the cars?
Those are the mayor's initials, right?
That's what you told me.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you there, Councilman. So every car had to have a control number. So in the new vehicle maintenance process that we're coming up with, it's fluid right now. So one of our biggest Achilles heels is vehicle maintenance. So we wanted to identify the time period, which administration. That's the JP. The 3 fields of vehicles bought in this time period, 001. We take 3 fields, so we can go up to 999, and then dash the year that it comes on market. So if we see that car going down the street, that's what we chose for control number. Any people use different, a number of digits. They use less, they use more, but I've seen it across the board. I've seen as many as 5. I've seen many as, that's probably 5 or 6, and I've seen less. I've seen 1. But it's not. I mean, that's how we did that. He is the mayor. He is the mayor of the city.
So when you say we came up with this, who is we that came up with this? Because as far as I have never seen where any mayor has put their initials on any vehicle.
I think that so I probably no mayor wanted to identify the cars the way that we wanted to identify them. Probably so.
So here's the deal, right? So I want to know why you need to put JP on there in order to identify when the vehicle came on the market. You just said that 2020 or 20 is on there. So we know the year by the numbers in which the vehicle was brought into service. There's absolutely no need to use anybody's initials. As I said during the public meeting, you, I am sure, and many others would decry if Donald Trump had put DT on Secret Service vehicles. We would say that's just inappropriate. It's out of order. Vehicles are not tied to a mayor. They're not tied to any individual. It's not tied to the city council. They belong to the city of Gary. So GPD, right, and some numbers and maybe -20 for 2020 would seem reasonable. JP seems like hubris. And I don't know, my understanding is that we paid too much for this lettering as it was, more than what we paid historically. And I just don't think it's appropriate for anybody's initials to be on public police vehicles. This is not Soviet Russia. This is not Saddam's Iraq, right? Where we have a police state that's associated with whoever's the leader, right? Leaders come and go. Mayors can change tomorrow, right? We have statutory law in process for the transition of people who are in power. So I think it's totally inappropriate. I will ask that it be removed within the next 60 days. And that if not, I will request, I will draft a resolution from this body until they get enough votes asking that it be removed, because it's totally inappropriate, it's undemocratic, and it just should not be.
So you know what, a couple of things. I certainly won't debate with you here in this forum, but this body has often said, well, I understand that we paid more and don't have a receipt to benchmark it against. And you put that out there and people believe that. So in my opinion, that's just reckless. So the control number, it's a matter of opinion. The vehicle maintenance, myself and others involved in creating a control number, that's the control number. It could stand for justice of the peace.
That's not what it stands for.
That's not what it stands for. Nor is justice of the peace the role of those who are driving the vehicles, right? So that's not a title that would.
But it's not a. It seems to be, to me, it's in today where we don't have police cars on the street. We haven't had police cars on the street since 2017. Is this body aware that we didn't insure police cars in 2017? And currently, at least 14 of those are sitting on the wayside in different stages of malfunction and wrecks that we haven't been able to get fixed because not one car was insured. How many people?
I think, can we, Mr. Chair, let's stay focused on the topic.
Stay focused.
Right now we're talking.
Wait a minute.
No, absolutely. Right now we're talking about the lettering on the vehicles and what's appropriate. I think to your point, I think what you're saying, and I know we've talked about it, is that we shouldn't be focused on the naming. We should be happy we have new vehicles, right? And so my point is that why are we focused on the naming, right? We should be focused on the new vehicles. And so someone made the decision to create control numbers that would be focused on the naming, which I think is a waste of time and a waste of money, and undemocratic. So my point is that it should not be on there. And I will ask Chief Evans, who was chief, because these letters weren't added in February of 2020 or March of 2020. This is something that happened, I suppose, in the last few months. I first saw it, I think, in December. So, Chief Evans, did you approve these control numbers, and who's in charge of vehicle maintenance?
In charge of vehicle maintenance for the Gary Police Department is Commander Colbert. No, I didn't have any input in the numbering of the vehicles as they stand.
And did Commander Colbert have any input?
No.
Okay, so he's over vehicle maintenance. And is the mayor aware of this? Did the mayor approve this?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know.
So I'll turn to you, Mr. Reeves and Attorney Colvin. Did the mayor approve? Was he aware that his initials would be put on police vehicles for the city of Gary?
I will say I'm going to take the sword here. I made him aware that this would be the control number.
Was it already done at that point, or was it at that point still anticipatory?
No, it was. I believe it was done at that point.
Okay, and what was his response to that?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay, Chief of Staff Attorney Colvin, I suppose, are you here to speak on behalf of the mayor?
On this issue, I'm not.
Okay, so I know it has come up in council meetings. It's been discussed in a variety of fora. Is there a position from the mayor's office on this?
The position that I know of is that the numbers will remain on the cars, the control numbers.
And my position is that they should be removed. And I will continue to hold that position until they are removed.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Attorney, Councilman Lay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. When you said that they're not going to be removed, if the council asked for them to be removed, why would we argue about numbers on the car? I'm saying if the council, now I'm not talking about a single individual, if the council itself, because of the controversy around the JP and these control numbers, how much does it cost per car to change the numbers? And how long does it take per car to change the numbers?
To whom are you directing the question?
If anyone that has the answer, Mr. Reeves.
Okay. I don't know the exact cost, but I mean, in the same way, I would be asked, why is the issue with the numbers? I mean, we're talking about a negligible thing.
Well, let me say this, Mr. Reeves. The high intent of police officers throughout America that has went on with police brutality and things of that nature, I would think if we're going to spend any extra money on any type of lettering, we would put serve and protect on there for one. I don't see that nowhere on not one car. But we put the mayor's initial on there. Really.
So I got
trying to change the culture, have things are moving in this country. I don't think the appropriate way of doing that is by putting the mayor's initials there. And when we're talking about funding in this city here, when we're scraping dollars and we use that thing that we don't have money so freely, but when we want to spend extra money on different things, we feel like it's okay. This is something I feel like those was extra dollars that we could have saved.
Mr. Brewer, I got the logo except for the control number, which are 2 digits compared to the masses, probably comes out to 0.5% of the total cost of each car. I got the logo design from the police department.
I got a question.
Percent of each car is $250.
I didn't say that.
So if the car is 50,000, 1% is 500.
No, of the graphics,
So
of the graphic cost. The graphic cost for each car, I am sure that those 2 digits are less than 1% of the total graphic costs for each individual car.
So it should be pretty inexpensive to just simply remove them. Thank you.
Well, it would, but for what reason? But
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Lay, then Councilwoman Caldwell.
Maybe I can help here. Mr. Reeves, I do not believe this is, they call it drawing a line in the sand. Here we're debating something that we probably are spending more money debating it than for it to be corrected. It's not the worst thing in the world that could have occurred, but should the council, the majority of this council, make that request, I'm assuming the mayor will probably tell you to remove the initials, period. He's not gonna, I just can't see him fighting over initials that you have already indicated it had been done before you advised him. Sometimes people that advise will fail to tell the person they advise him what they're doing. So if he didn't direct you to do it, I can't see him drawing a line in the sand just on the issues of JP, if that's what we need to take off. The only way, I would assume that you could do 2 a day, I guess. If you're taking them off, I mean, you might could do them all in a day, so you don't have them being changed and not in service. So I would suggest that you discuss that with the mayor, deliver to him what may be occurring, because I think enough people are speaking to it. So I don't see having to fight over this issue. It's just not worth drawing a line in the sand and then pouring concrete in it. So again, you should bring that to the mayor's attention so that you're not in a fight with the legislative body. We do have powers equal to the mayor. It's unfortunate that a single person can move much quicker than 9 people. We disagree. But once we move as 9, we're equal to the mayor because we can override that veto. So again, I would suggest you bring it to his attention that the council, and I'm sure between you and the chief of staff, he will be aware of it, that should be done. I would think I would do it if I was mayor. I would argue over something a little bit more substantive than initials on a vehicle.
Councilwoman Caldwell, then Officer Wolf.
Maybe I missed this. Those initials were put on after you received the vehicles, or when they came out of the Ford company, or with everything?
Those initials and the wrap, what I'm calling the wrap, they come on the cars after they leave the Ford plant. Correct.
Oh, you decided while you were purchasing the vehicles that you would put those initials on there.
I didn't decide, wholeheartedly. We were coming up with a new vehicle maintenance program. If you notice, the new F-250s also have control numbers that have JP, not just the police cars.
President of FOP.
I would have been happy with that big G and an exclamation point instead of JP.
No. President of the FOP, Mr. Wolf.
Good evening, everybody. I just have suggestions as far as this goes. Mr. Reeves explained that one of the city vehicles has the JP on it still, which I've noticed, the white plow truck. In my history and my experience in fleet and dealing with fleets and things of that nature, putting a control number on a vehicle works for things like trucking companies, probably any of the other city vehicles. My suggestion is we revert our unit numbers back to the way they traditionally are, 2 and 3 numbers. And the reason being is this isn't about any particular reason. It's about our citizens. Our citizens identify the police by our unit numbers. Car 134 was just shot and drove into the woods, or this car cut me off and it's a JP 20-6345 that's our unit numbers are for the citizens to identify us. Them control numbers go on fleet jackets for police, that how I would view it will go on fleet jackets to identify the vehicles internally, not for the public eye. So my suggestion would be also to remove that. It's a hot topic around the police department. It's not favorable by any means. And I know that probably wasn't the intention, but I think we need to go back to the traditional way of numbering our cars, keeping it simple, 2 and 3 numbers, so our citizens can efficiently and easily identify us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council member at this time?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Lade and Councilman.
As rare as it will be, I agree with Mr. Wolf. Let's reduce it to where it's easily identified by the citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Lay. I appreciate that.
No, don't appreciate it.
Wish him luck.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do
It's
that.
too early in
I
the game,
appreciate
man.
the moment. I appreciate the moment.
Yeah, it's just a moment.
That's it. The beginning and the end is very close together.
Mr. Chairman.
I have go ahead.
It's you, yes.
Okay, now I'll be quick. But my understanding is that the QPA never closed, that it ended April of 2020, and that you use the current pricing until a new QPA is generated. The 2021 Explorer QPA price is $31,250 plus $1,000 for options. Total finished price from dealer would be $32,250. Emergency equipment is between $6,000 to $7,000, total of less than $40,000 equipped and ready to hit the street. Now, I don't think that we already identified that the appropriate commanders were contacted on this purchasing. I'm aware that it cost the department $170 per graphic kit, then $130 to have it installed, so a total of $300 per car. Now, I'm not going to name where I got that information from, but I will tell you it's someone who works with the police department. And so I guess the concern I have, and we'll have to follow up on this when we get the invoices, is that the numbers we've heard roughly are 59,000, 51 to 53,000, which are different than the numbers that I have here. And secondly, the question about the QPA is a question as well. So it seems to me that the police department and the administration internally are not on the same page. It also seems to me that while I love Mr. Reeves, he's my brother, we disagree at times, that Mr. Reeves is involved in a whole lot. And I think that we need to revive the parties within various departments that are supposed to be doing this. And I think that would eliminate a lot of the questions and concerns. I think it would be good for the members of the police department. They have a vehicle maintenance operation. This is not their first time ordering vehicles. They should be leading this process in that they are experts in what their vehicles require. And I think the chief and deputy chief should be central in that process. There's a finance person over in the police department. So I don't understand why the administration is putting so much on Mr. Reeves. And I think that we need to have a clear division of roles and responsibilities within the department and within the administration. And I am looking forward to getting the invoices for 2017 and 2020, as well as a clarification on this QPA, because the information I have just received is not what I'm hearing on this call. Thank you.
Any other council members on the issue of police vehicles at this time before we move on? Okay, I will move from the police vehicles at this time to moving to actual public safety issues. At the last council meeting, I referenced about a sheet showing homicides, violent crimes that were happening inside of 2020, and now we're inside of 2021. And I just would like to know, what is our approach with dealing with the crime? And I also spoke about numerous chases that have been happening inside the city at the same time, inside of 2021. We know what's happening inside of one of our neighboring cities in Chicago, where within a month they have seen over 200 carjackings over in Chicago, even with dealing with police officers being carjacked. And some of that has spilled over, probably not per se in Gary as much, but inside of our surrounding cities too. But we do see a mass number of individuals coming this way as they're running from the police. Chief, at this time.
Thank you, Councilman. So you're absolutely correct with the increase in our non-fatal shootings and homicides from 2019 to 2020. I will preference that I don't like using numbers to justify police services or plans, because it's not an efficient way to do it, because these numbers reflect a lot of different variables. I will say that 2020 was the most violent year that we've seen in a decade in America. And Indiana particularly has had more gun sales and gun permits issued legally than ever before. And before June of last year, 4 million guns were purchased in the United States of America. So much so that we as a police department could not only purchase weapons to replace ones that we were taking out of service, we couldn't even purchase ammunition to qualify. So it was an unprecedented year, unlike other. For 2019, just tell you these numbers, we had 108 homicides. I'm sorry, non-fatal shootings. In 2020, we had 178. That's a 65% increase. In that same year, in 2019, we had 58 homicides. Last year, we had 54. It's a 7% decrease. So as you see, the number of homicides to shootings don't always equate to one another, because last year we were 7% down in homicides, but we were 65% up in shootings. This year, year to date, we had 17 non-fatal shootings. Non-fatal means the person isn't dead. 2020 at this time, we had 16. So an increase of a couple of percent. Last year, this time we had 8 homicides. This year we have 4. Now I will say this about the way the police department tries to tackle violent crime. We track violent crime every week. We meet, we track the data, and we break violent crime down, which is non-fatal shootings and shootings, particularly gun violence, in several categories. One will be group violence. We no longer have gangs. Get that out of your mind. No more GDs, vice lords, they all hang together. They cousins, brother, sister, that doesn't matter. What we have is groups and small cliques that drive violence. And last year in 2020, from all our data, that number was down significantly. But the number that rose were drug-related incidents and incidents which we can't do anything about, like the tragedy we just had happen in the 1st District, which was a domestic murder-suicide between a domestic couple. Those are the things that we can't stop. We also have had a few other incidents that we track if they're domestic related, if they're drug related, if they're gang related or group related, as I call them, or something that, we just can't stop, such as a murder-suicide. With the cars and the chases, as the Pew Research shows that last year and into this year, there's been probably a 600% increase in carjackings, not just in Illinois, but everywhere. We haven't seen that come our way yet. I will not say that it will not come this way. And if you look at the news, which everybody sees, the offenders are very young and very violent. I will say this, as I said in council, and I implore our citizens to cooperate when someone approaches you. In every instance in this city where someone has been harmed or worse, when they were approached and killed, it has been when they have resisted the offender, who oftentimes is a very young person and may not have the same mindset or sensibilities or respect for life as you will. Anything material can be replaced. Anything material can be given back. So this public should give that individual exactly what they're asking for, let them have it and walk away. Stuff can be replaced, people and items can't. Last year, we also charged individuals with several of our high profile crimes, such as the killing of Mr. Hearns, who was delivering pizza and persons tried to rob him. We also had the charges of the young man who was killed with the Xbox, in another situation where they tried to rob him, and another non-fatal shooting where we had another pizza delivery man shot in our city. So we work those cases until we can get a resolution on them or until we exhaust all avenues of investigation, and then we revisit them in our cold case files. The plan of action for the police department is to try to do everything we can to work smarter with our data, because we are a smaller department than we were 2 years ago. We're a smaller department than we were this time last year. And so we can only work smarter and work small, like playing small ball in baseball, trying to target the areas that we want to see more increased patrols in that have the high activity. We track it weekly, trying to ramp it up to tracking it every 3 days and daily, but I need some more additional researchers and analytics to make that happen. I can't do that with our current stance. So we're going to be asking of probably the council to provide us with some funding, maybe to deal with our analytics, which are very important for us to see where the crime is happening and see it a little bit quicker than we do right now. So that's our plan, as well as accumulating much more equipment. Like I told you, we have a license plate reader. I was in a meeting today with our HIDA Executive Director Board, and the state is getting ready to do a license plate reader program through the state police that may go statewide. That will save us a lot of money. And the key thing about it is they will communicate with one another. Crime, just like attendance in church, just like school and work, is fluid. We are a global society now, and we are a very traveled community. We don't attend church in our same community. We don't go to school in the same community we live in, and neither do criminals. Our crime is fluid between Hammond, East Chicago, Gary, Detroit, Indianapolis. We're all connected in some way. And we communicate with these agencies on all these crimes. I won't go into details, but we communicate very, very well with our outside agencies and agencies that are outside of our state. And when I talk about our weekly meetings, other departments are in our weekly meetings with us. All of our task force officers, our Lake County Drug Task Force, we even have Maryville coming to some of our meetings, and we're having a lot more cooperations between us so that we can try to tackle this collaboratively. You know, we are a very fluid and mobile society now. Nothing is neighborhood anymore. Like I said, most people don't even go to church in the neighborhood anymore. When I was growing up, church was down the street, school was on the other side. It's not like that anymore. It's not like that for many of us. And the same thing happens with crime. People are very mobile. People live here today. They live in East Chicago tomorrow, then they're back in Gary, another community next year.
So Chief, I want to ask, how do you partner with some of the other agencies? I know inside of Gary, we have a Gary Police Department, we have the IUN Police Department, and we also have our Lake County Police Department. How do you all three interact with each other? And even sometimes we have the state police inside. So that's 4 agencies. How do you all interact inside the city to reduce the crime rate that we have?
So as I said, those entities that you just named and others are part of our weekly shooting review. We also have, believe it or not, several chat groups that we use cell phones with. So when crime happens in the city, it's more likely that we're chatting about it on a cell phone with everybody, with the state police, with representative from every agency around here, and representative from all our task force. And you'll be surprised how much information we get back from those agencies. Someone from Portage or Highland can say, hey, I know that individual, here's his information or her information. Or better yet, when we have a violent crime, our ATF task force, SAC, the supervisor agent in charge, is on that chat. The FBI agent in charge in front of GRID is on our chat. The members from all the agencies around us are on that chat. And believe it or not, we solve a lot of crime and get a lot of help that way to begin the process of communicating with each other. It's much more efficient to do it that way. And then on our weekly meeting, they're all invited, you know, if there's an issue, or we talk whenever we need to. We have developed contacts with everybody. And let me just say this, unfortunately, because of, you know, the way that things are going here, we have a Gary police officer on every police department in Northwest Indiana and Porter County. And if you're talking about Highland, the former chief of Maryville, the chief of Sheriffville, those were all Gary policemen. So we know these individuals. These are not strangers. State police, Gary policemen. Chicago, we got 3 officers there. We got officers on Secret Service. The Gary Police Department has farm policemen everywhere. So if we need to speak to somebody in another police department, generally we're talking to ourselves.
I'll open up for council members at this time that may have a question for the chief.
I had one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Lay.
You mentioned equipment. Can we be provided with the list of various equipment that the police department needs?
Absolutely. I will get you a great list of equipment we need and where we want to use it. Body cam, license plate readers, I'll go down the line.
Because I think you and I talked when we were talking about that 2% tax.
Yes, sir.
That I need, if I could see the listing, there may be another way we can approach this technology if we know what to ask for.
Technology is the only way we can work smart by being small.
Now, you said the governor has money down there. He's talking about going statewide.
The state police are talking about a statewide license plate reader program, and so is our local HIDA. The thing that we talked about in the meeting today in an executive session was the cost. You know, they're very expensive, and I think we're all spending money on the same items. And if we don't buy the same thing, they can't communicate. Now, we have access to everybody's data. So when we have a situation happen, such as a situation that happened in one of our local auto yards, where a guy went in there and cut off a bunch of Cadillac converters and burnt up 100 cars, we were able to put that partial plate in the license plate reader that we didn't even have, but we have access to the data and get a good hit back. So the state is moving to try to bring us all together in that process, because license plate readers are the way that we can solve crime and try to find out where these vehicles are doing it. Because in our community, that's why people travel around, cars. You know, there's not a lot of public transportation here.
Would that be free? Is that something, would that be a grant or something that's given to the city?
The way they're talking, some of it may be at no cost, or the state would purchase it and farm it out as needed. But I believe the conversation, and I brought this up today, was basically getting the state to get on board to do just what we talked about with the vehicles. Come up with a state pricing so we can all get a better rate. You know, these license plate readers can cost anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 a piece. And if we're buying one, Hammond's buying one, Highland's buying one, we should be able to get a better rate than where we.
So they're not on each individual car. I don't understand how they're deployed. Are they on each individual car?
No, they're both. So the one we have is car deployed, because it was more affordable to do it that way with a front and rear system. The ones in Hammond and Highland are stationary. So You buy the stationary cameras and you pick which directions, north and south, east and west, or if you can afford it, which can be the $50,000 model, you can get all 4 directions for that one license plate reader. It doesn't do facial recognition, so it doesn't violate the law, but it does license plates.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Godwin?
Thank you, Chief Evans, for all that you do. And I know we even participated in a call last week, get my days mixed up, with one of our large apartment complexes. So I know you have your hands full. I wanted to ask 2 questions. Number one, have we considered using stop sticks in terms of slowing down folks who are making these quick escapes with the chases? And also the extent to which we are looking at the ability. I know some cities, what they do is they will post up outside of places like public schools where they know the parents generally should be residents of the city if their child is attending a neighborhood public school, to basically check those license plates as people are leaving to ensure that people are compliant with the 60-day waiver, right, of getting an Indiana license plate. So that's something that we have considered doing.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. So we have stop sticks. We had talked, we're in the process thinking about purchasing some new ones. The issue that, or trepidation I have with it, is that what you're basically doing is you're disabling a vehicle that may be moving with a teenage driver that can cause significant damage or possibly harm anyone. Our policy at the Gary Police Department is our supervision monitors the officers. They're supposed to call out their attempted stops or pursuits. And if it gets dangerous, we stop it. It is not worth a citizen's life or even offender's life for a traffic violation. So we're examining that. We're thinking about doing it and doing some more training on it. That would require us to be in a position to disable the car. Like I said, it may stop, which they're designed to do, or it could cause further damage. In addition to that, yes, we have thought about and even talked to Griffith and Hammond about how they did their partnership with the schools with the license plates. Griffith had a very successful one, partnering with their local school system as well as their apartment complex, like we talked about in that last call we were on, and using both those methods to basically challenge people who say that they don't live in the state, yet they have out-of-state plates. And I will say this for everybody: that problem is countywide. I've talked to every chief around here. I don't care if you ride around anywhere in this county, you're going to see a large number of Illinois plates because a large number of individuals have moved from Illinois to Indiana because of the cost of living. And so various departments have done that in that way. Hammond did something a little different. I talked to Chief Short about 2 weeks ago about their programs, a little different than Griffith's. And so our next phase is to move to talk to the apartment complex, which we were doing, and school systems when they go back to school, which I think is quickly. And I will talk to Dr. McNulty and her staff about how we do that with our law department to find out what's legal.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other council members? Question for the chief at this time?
I have one more if no one else does.
Okay.
I know we have talked about, and to the extent that it's appropriate for a public forum, our hiring needs and demands. I know that FOP President Wolf has been stalwart advocate about that concern. I think I'm getting a feedback from someone. The last number that I heard was 153 officers. And obviously that's way below the budgeted 200 and the ideal 180. And I know that we have retirements and other dismissals that will cause that number to perhaps go even lower. What is our plan, our contingency plan, to ensure that we have a sufficient number of officers to not just meet our minimum 12 officer threshold, but really to exceed it, ideally, especially in the troubled hotspots? So the first part of the question is, where are we in terms of our planning of new recruits and making sure we have enough officers? And secondly, where are we in terms of, to the extent that you can answer this, providing hazard pay to the officers with the CARES Act dollars, and probably Chief of Staff Coleman can help us for them, because I know that is part of negotiations, and other departments like Maryville have done that to basically compensate their officers as first responders. Thank you.
So let me start with the numbers. You're absolutely right. We're about 154 now, and we are 47 officers short of our 46 officers short of our full complement. Last year we lost about 22 officers, and we hired 4. So what we're doing right now is we have a hiring process that is in process right now. We should have been able to send officers to the academy in January, but we could not because of COVID. So the academy, State Police Academy, which we have to attend, we have one here in Hobart, we have one in Plainfield. Both of those academies shut down last year during the COVID crisis. When they opened back up, they finished that one class they did last year. They didn't do 2. And they had a waiting list for individuals that should have been in the second class, which was the latter part of the year, which neither academy did. So when the academy started up this year, it was already filled with persons who should have went in 2020. We didn't have an opportunity to get anybody in there. As far as hiring, we've been negotiations with, not negotiations, we're getting ready to start a emergency hire process. We've gotten people every time we've done that. Not a great deal, but some, to try to entice people who are already academy certified to come. Because as it is right now, we won't have an academy in the state until July or August at any rate. So we couldn't send anybody there until that point then. We have about 10 officers that are ready to go. And let me talk about that. There's nothing secret about that. Law enforcement in 2020 and 2021 is extremely unpopular. It is very difficult to get candidates in the door for everybody. I will say this, I have a cousin who's a supervisor on the Los Angeles Police Department. I have a cousin who's a supervisor in Little Rock, Arkansas. I have a cousin by marriage who's a FBI agent. All of us have problems getting people in the door. And LA pays a great deal of money to keep officers and retain them. So money is not a motivator with the current type of employee that we hire. Everybody we hire, for the most part, is going to be under the age of 35. In an age group are very likely not to stay on a job for very long or come to be the police. In our last process, we took 101 applications, which is pitiful. So when I came on the police department, we took hundreds. Out of that 101 applicants, we only have 10 people that are qualified to be police officers. And when I say that, I mean 10 people you want to come to your home and deal with your problems. The other 90, you don't want, and we can't hire them. So that is the problem in today with we have to try to do what we can to entice people into the profession. So what is going on, as I said earlier, we've got a policeman on every police department in Lake and Porter County. And that's because other departments cherry pick one another. And we're primed for that. You know, they cherry pick us. I don't care what anybody says. You can't get any better training than you get in Gary, Indiana for any type of crime. And we do the best background check that anybody does because we can't take any type of snafus with the officers that we hire. As you see, when something happens here, I'll put them out the door quick as I can because we can't take that here. So retention is a problem, and I will try to put forth some plans maybe offline to the Public Safety Committee to try to help us understand and try to get a better candidate. I will say this, we've also had a high failure rate with our out-of-state candidates from Illinois, and I don't know why. When I mean failure rate in the academy, it's about 50%. They just don't work out, and the academy graduation is part of the hiring process. As far as hazard pay and everything else, we're in negotiations with that, but I'll let Chief of Staff Coleman talk about that. And like I said, son of a preacher, so I didn't talk long enough. We got to take an offering.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Lake.
One of the reasons I not only have I talked to you, I think I've discussed the number of police officers. I also have had this discussion with other members of the police department. It's our geographical area that requires more officers too. In other words, we are probably twice the size of Hammond geographically, because we, go from Hammond all the way back to, I guess, to Portage. So as a result of that geographical area, we need more police officers. another individual, and it may have been you, Chief, but I talked to someone that indicated we probably needed 200 as a minimum to cover the geographical area that we have to cover. So again, I believe we had that discussion, but I'm not going. I'm getting a little bit older than Mr. Godwin, so my memory don't serve me. And you didn't put it in writing either. So yeah, so that's why I understand we need these 50 officers. That may be something that will come under this new administration. And when I mean the new administration, I'm talking about the federal government. And even if the state is doing certain things, it may be smart for us to, and I think Attorney Colvin and I have talked about it, since we didn't get to the 2% and all of that for technology, that we may be willing to look at a grant. That's what I requested, that equipment before, that listing. Of course, she would have to do it, but I'm good at making suggestions, but she would have to put the grant together.
If I could add to what you said, Councilman, to try to give the rest of the people that's on here a understanding of just what the councilman has said. We did talking, and you have a great memory, Councilman. I don't care what you say.
Well, I make Mr. Godwin feel better by saying it's deficient.
we do a study every month of our crimes. The Gary Police Department responds to roughly, on an average, about 5,000 calls per month. When we did this study for the month of October, the Gary Police Department, in 1 week, had responded to 5,500 calls for service. That's a lot of calls. Our largest neighbor by police standards is Hammond. They have 211 officers, many more than we do, but they're half our geographical size, but they're more densely populated by at least 12 or 15,000 residents. They only had 800 more calls for service than we did. So we have a lot of calls for service with about 25 or 26 more square miles to cover. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that the need is great because we are a large city. We are a large geographical land area to cover, and we have a lot of calls.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think Attorney Colvin was going to respond to the hazard pay question.
Attorney Colvin?
You know, as I indicated, I think at the council meeting, we have been having some discussions with the FOP, and Sergeant Wolf can chime in if he wants to. But in any case, our original thought had been discussions about the hazard pay, but that has taken us we've gone a little broader than that in terms of the approach that we might want to take. And one of the things that we've had to do is a little research about what some of the neighboring communities do. So we've reached out to the town of Highland, and our next step is to look at or have a discussion with them to see how they've set up our proposal. And once we get that information, then we can go forward. So we're still talking, but we are intending to put together a more comprehensive approach. In fact, Sergeant Wolf made a suggestion about even how to structure raises using the CARES Act money. So that's maybe something that we can look at as well. So it's a little bit more comprehensive than we started out our discussions with, but we think everybody will end up maybe, I'll say, more happy than we were when we went in. I'll just put it that way.
Okay, so
and Sergeant Wolf might want to say something too.
Sergeant Wolf, you have any comments to what Ms. Colvin just said?
I'll just piggyback off of what Attorney Colvin said. We are currently in negotiations. I put together a pretty comprehensive new proposal that the chief and myself and Attorney Colvin and Deputy Mayor McCain and Attorney Pohl had discussed, and we did try to be creative with the CARES Act money on how that could be helpful, as well as contractual items that would address the importance and the thing that I've been talking about all this time of retention and retaining our officers. And I think we've got a foot in the right direction right now. Hopefully that turns into a walk and we can get to our destination with it. So as of right now, things are in progress. It's a work in progress. We got a lot of work to do, but I'm committed, and I believe the city is showed by giving us a meeting that they're committed as well. So we'll see where it goes. We'll be setting another meeting here shortly, and then we'll see where we end up.
Okay. So Chief, I would like to ask about what's the process of getting reserves to come on. I believe it's a little more relaxed to getting reserves to come on than police officer, but I'm very troubled with the numbers that we are at now, 154, and there's no one inside the academy now. We look like we can get on a spiral that's going down that we may not be able to turn back from, because we do know there's still officers that's going to retire, and some instances there's officers that we have to let go. And that puts us in a bad situation also too, when we talk about retention at the same time, and just officers just up and leave for other reasons.
So everything we talked about, let me make sure I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Sure.
I'm out here to help.
You good, Chief?
Okay. All right. Let me say this. Everything that we talked about will help with trying to get officers in the door. The emergency hire, we actually had somebody come every time we've done that. We're going to put about 10 in this next academy, which is everybody that we have left. But in that 101 applicants that we got for sworn, I didn't mention it, but there were 58 for reserves. They're passing, they have to pass the same requirements that we do to serve as reserves. Their failure rate was even lower. I think only 8 of them passed through. So that's not the answer. And I say that because people don't want to be the police and be paid. They certainly don't want to be the police and be volunteers. Some do, but that number is even less. So we have, like I said, 10 out of the 101 sworn, the people that are going to be on salary go to the academy. And out of the 58 that applied at the same time and went to the same physical agility and written exam and all that, it's less than 10. So those are in process now. We'll try to get those on the street, and reserves take a lot longer to get on the street and train, because when you go to the academy for 13 or 15 weeks, that's all you do. You get all of your mandated training out of the way. When a person comes on the police department as a reserve officer, they have a 400-hour training process, an FTO process that they have to do around their job. So it's a lot longer with them. So that's a long-term process. It's not a quick answer, because we just can't get them and put them on the streets because they're completely untrained. I think the way we're going, what we're talking about with all of us, I even talked about, and I hope I'm not putting them out there, the FOP and I talked about some type of recruitment, some type of advertisement to try to get people in the door. But we've got to become more competitive with our benefits in order to make that make sense. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's just not going to make sense to try to, and we're going to do what we can, but everybody else is the saving grace, and everybody else is hiring. They can't hire as many as we can.
So would it be safe to say that with retirement and retirement, that you may possibly lose at least another 5 this year in retirement?
That's an easy plus. I think we'll probably lose 5 to 10 this year. So the 10 we'll hire will just keep us at this level, besides whatever we get with this emergency hiring that we're getting ready to do with the police commission.
So that doesn't fill a gap if any officers will leave and go to another department, fired, or anything of that nature there?
No, we're going to immediately do another testing. Well, let me not speak for the police commission. I'm asking the police commission, and once we get this list done, that they immediately put out another process so that we can try to get people, if they do another academy this year, at the end of the year.
So is there a certified list now that's waiting, or they still have to go through the commission?
They're in the last process with the commission. It'll be certified after that, but then they'll be ready to go to the academy. At that point, they can put out another testing, another application process, which is already ongoing. They're giving them out now.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
Councilman Lane.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the police commission is vital in terms of the hiring of police officers. That they certainly should be involved at the very threshold, because they test, they do everything. They can, you could be losing people just based on the police commission itself. Who investigates now? IAD still investigates?
Yes, sir. ID does the background investigation and provides that packet to the police commission.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
So one suggestion I have heard is allowing some of our detectives who are they are used to doing background checks and investigating to assist with this process, because it seems that our hiring process takes, and I could be wrong, please correct me, is taking a long time. Beyond the academy issues, just dealing with the police commission and officers' ability to quickly move into our department. Are there things we can do to make that process more efficient or more swift by, changing how we're doing the background checks? I know that Sergeant Wolf may have thoughts on this too as the FOP president, but are we looking at what we can do to quicken this?
So Sergeant Wolf and I diverge a little bit on this issue, but not by much. So in the last process that we just had with those 10, before we had that number, I had committed to sending as many detectives from the investigative division or anyone who had ever worked internal affairs to assist them in getting the packets, what we call the investigative packets, done. But it wasn't anything but 18. It didn't take long to do them. There was a time that this process could take up to a year. We have it down under 6 months. There's another process that we do, which a lot of police departments don't, which is we require or we try to get information from everywhere you live. If you lived in Korea on a military base, we're going to contact them, and everywhere around there, because we consider Class A misdemeanors, and a lot of departments don't, but we do. And if you talk to other agencies, they'll tell you they hire Gary policemen because we have a rock solid background investigation. I'll put that up against anybody's in this area. It does take a little longer, but we get a solid product out at the end of it. So one of the things that we're going to do, and it hasn't been an issue because we haven't had that many candidates because we can't get them in the door, is to hire an outside company of some type, similar to the fire department, to do that pre-employment question, which takes so long, and then we can move forward. But I'm committed with having as many investigators and CVSA operators, which is our lie detector, committed to the process. So if we get 50 people in the door, we'll get them through the process.
And I guess what it sounds like is that we are basically the talent recruitment agency for Northwest Indiana, right? Because our problem is not merely recruitment, but it's retention. And if we're doing all the work for Hammond and Hobart and other departments who then just take our folks, pay them $5, $10, or how many ever $1,000 more, and then we're scrambling. And so I guess it seems to me we have a Band-Aid and we need a whole surgical operation to really be a sustainable police department. And so, as you know, some of us on the council fought pretty hard to try to get raises, knowing that that wasn't necessarily the full solution, but it certainly was moving in the direction of being more competitive with the neighboring departments. And so I'm hopeful that over the course of this year that yourself and that the administration will work with Sergeant Wolf and the union to negotiate a contract that will properly, or at least better, compensate our police officers. Because the problem is only going to get worse, because we know, I believe East Chicago just opened up hiring, Maryville, I think, as well, or will be. So we're going to have the same conversation in 2022 and in 2023, and for those of us who may still be around in 2024, unless we fundamentally change how we are compensating our officers. And it's going to only get worse as you have more retirees and a harder time bringing in new people.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Lay.
I didn't know whether Evans wanted to respond to that or not, but.
Well, yeah, but I think you got a problem much bigger than salary. You believe you're going to resolve this problem with salary. What about this Class A misdemeanor? That's not a state requirement, is it?
Yeah.
That we don't hire anybody with a Class A misdemeanor.
I don't believe it is a state requirement.
Well, that may be the first place one should move. Your commission would dump, and I'm sure Attorney Williams is quite familiar with what I'm about to say. The commission could dump literally, I don't know, hundreds of people in terms of a Class A misdemeanor. It's all over the place. I remember we had a case where person that worked a couple of years and had moved up to corporal. I think it ended up with Attorney Williams handling the case. I started out on it, and they brought in a more brilliant attorney to finish it. Yeah, that was him. That was him.
It
But
depends.
again, I think that may be a bigger problem than salaries, this Class A misdemeanor. That may be causing you to lose a lot of officers, and the Class A misdemeanor is all over the place. I mean, you could have a Class A by driving, over the speed limit. I mean, it's all over the place. So that may be the first thing to look at is, if you can get rid of that, it's not a state policy. Maybe not only that, maybe you should break it down in certain Class A misdemeanors you don't consider. I saw that as a problem when I represented the police commission. I represented them twice, this Class A misdemeanor. And certainly with all this expungement, I guess you could tell them all to go get expunged. They may not have a problem doing that, but I would look at breaking down this Class A misdemeanor, taking a much closer look at it rather than just cause. I remember, I guess he's a lieutenant now, Cannon. He and I even went to another city and state because this person's name, I can't remember, and I wouldn't say it if I could. It popped up that way. So I would look at that rather than say, well, if we give everybody $100,000, we're going to get all these new police officers. I believe that is a bigger problem in terms of why you have 101 and 58 of them are not qualified. That Class A misdemeanor may be getting rid of a large number of people.
That was not the case in this last instance, and we do break them down. Even if you have a Class A misdemeanor, if it's domestic, the federal government won't allow you to be a police officer because you can't carry a gun. It just depends on what it is. But I can honestly say with this last class, that wasn't it. They were not suitable for various criminal.
Oh yeah, I know that can occur, but I was just saying if
would help.
You break down these various Class A misdemeanors, that they're not all treated the same. I believe we also have that requirement over in the fire department, don't we? I'm not sure, but I think it's over there too. But I know it's in the police department.
I thought the only requirement was getting to bed when they get to work. I said it.
That's why if your house catch on fire, you're probably gonna have to get to the police union to put it out too.
Councilman Carr, we want to restate your question. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure I even remember, but I think that
well, you tied it to salary. I think you should look at the Class A misdemeanor before you worry about salary.
And I would say in response, like many things, is both and, not either or. Right? I think that, you've seen it, I'm sure, Chief, the publications that come out from East Chicago and now Schererville, they're beautiful, right? They tell you we're offering this amount of salary, which is at least usually $10,000 more than what we're offering, certainly for our experienced officers. And then they'll say this is a housing package we're offering, home ownership assistance. It just goes down the line. They have a better health insurance program. I mean, it's just very competitive. And so I suppose that, again, I am hopeful that Sergeant Wolf and the administration and yourself will, in short order, I don't want us to have this conversation in October, November, in the middle of the budget. All right, I'm hopeful, and I will be encouraging the administration to sit down with the union and develop an appropriate, updated agreement. And I think we need to start moving in the direction. I know we may not be able to do extreme things given our budget constraints, but we have to have a plan, whether it's the 2% tax, we want to try to do that to divert dollars we'd otherwise be using in other places, but to equip our officers better. I support that. And I believe Councilman Lay joins me in supporting a limited area of food and beverage tax. So whatever our plan is, I'd rather us talk about it in the spring as opposed to in the middle of the budget season. We know we're going to continue to lose officers. We know we're going to have a hard time recruiting new officers. Whether it's both the misdemeanor piece, maybe if someone had a misdemeanor several years ago, we won't consider that depending on the type of misdemeanor, versus someone who had one last year, right? So maybe those kinds of differences can be made. But we know that the financial piece is one. I talk to officers all the time, right, who are getting officers from a variety of departments. And who can blame people? I mean, everyone has cost of living, houses, aspirations, dreams. We're not talking about $500 more, $1,000 more. You start talking about someone making $5,000 and $10,000 more. That's serious money. And some of these are obviously they're not picking our least performing officers; they're picking our highest performing officers. So we got to find whether it's some kind of merit system, whether it's pay for performance. I'm probably going to get in trouble saying that. We've got to find some creative ways to properly pay our officers, or we're going to continue to see the police department dwindle down, and that's just not sustainable.
I will say this, that we have another plan in place to try to increase our manpower. Until it's vetted by the law department, I can't discuss it in a public forum, but I could discuss it with the Public Safety Committee. It's not controversial. We just have to make sure that we do it in a manner that other departments do this. And you're absolutely right. We need to do everything we can. I think this is a big board. We throw everything on the wall and see what sticks to try to increase our manpower and do all of that. And you're right. We have been a training ground for other police departments, but that's not nothing new. My badge number, and I'm going to date myself here, and if any of the officers on here tease me, you will be walking the beat. But my badge number is 1269, and we just issued out a 1605. And every number in between mine and theirs has been filled and occupied by a Gary police officer. You know, that's over 3,000, 300 numbers. That's a lot of people. So we need to try to do what we can to mitigate the officers leaving and try to get more people in the door. But there are other plans in place, and I'll be glad to discuss them with you when offline.
Okay.
And I'm getting a lot of texts from the fire department, so I'm going to need a police escort out of the building.
Yeah, you are.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest you also compare with comparable forces. Don't bring me a town that has 4 police officers versus a town that has a requirement for 200. That's the way you look at. You have to look at apples to apples, not certainly because you these smaller towns or even smaller cities look at the size of their police department. Again, we got to look at budgets. I mean, we just can't do this abstractly. We got to look and see the availability, certainly of money. Everybody is underpaid. I mean, that's not new. Even this council, well, I start to say this council, yeah, I even agree, we probably underpaid. But again, it's only 9 of us. So we can do something with 9 that we can't do with 200. So I want, whenever you come back with you bring me a comparable. I'm sorry, Mr. Wolf, I'm going to let you speak and then I'm going to say something.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I thought you definitely. So just bring me back a comparable. Don't come back and say these people make 50,000 or 100,000. Tell me how many make the 100,000. What part of the budget of that community? And in other words, I will now use this undergraduate degree I have in accounting. Numbers. I like numbers. Should have figured that out by now. So bring me back numbers that I can compare the two things with. Not just an arbitrary 100,000, 70,000. That I'm sure the chief of police in a smaller town may get paid more than you get paid. Maybe.
Okay. Anything else, council members? I want to end with this point here, Chief, and if you can touch on it. I see it's at the chat there. Comments about, when there's police involved shooting, police accidents that happen, and I know that we don't investigate ourselves. So if you can just speak to that for the public record. And, a lot of times people want comments and they want us to participate in certain things. Can you just expound on that a little bit there?
I'm very glad you asked that question because I get asked the same question in public forums and in council meetings and even on the street. And I will say this, the Gary Police Department, for my entire service on the police department, almost 27 years, has never investigated its own shootings, fatal or non-fatal, or on personal injury accidents where an officer hits someone and someone goes to the hospital for a very good reason. We don't want to have even the appearance of impropriety. If we investigated it ourselves, how could you trust it? The agency that does most of the investigation has been Lake County. Gary is in the county. They're a county agency and they're very good investigating, and they don't turn any of the official documentation over to the police department. In these instances, these cases, and let's talk about the one that everybody's talking about, which is our shootings. In the instance where we have a fatal shooting or non-fatal shooting, the county police is called to the scene and they take over that scene at that point, which is investigation, evidence collection, interviews of the officers and people involved, and putting together a case file and turning it over to the prosecutor. At no point do we interview, collect evidence, talk to the officers about the situation, or any of that until the investigation is completed. When they finish their investigation, they turn it directly over to the Lake County Prosecutor's Office for a determination of charging, non-charging, whether the incident was considered justified or non-justified. And I think that's the best way that it can happen. Other agencies in this county do them themselves. And I think that we just can't do that, because how could you trust that, whether it's a shooting or a fatal accident, fatal or non-fatal? As it relates to how we share information, many times we don't have enough information to share with you because we don't do the investigation. And oftentimes people are represented by attorneys from the very inception of the shooting, which means we cannot talk about the incident under any circumstances. We cannot discuss it even after it's over, because now we're in litigation.
Thank you, Chief. And I have definitely tried to work with you all on that. And especially when it becomes we're definitely been sued, and when we see those notices, make sure we refrain from any questions inside the public, because at that time the attorneys are involved in it, and anything you can say will be used against you in a court of law. So I would just want to make sure we direct that comment there that was posted there inside the chat there, and for everyone can have just clear knowledge how the process works. But Chief, I do appreciate you taking up the time, and Ms. Colvin that's on also, and Officer Wolf for coming on also, and all my colleagues. We will have these meetings at least every other month to keep updates with what's going on inside our community there. My prayer is that we don't have a violent summer, but it kind of bothers me a little bit with what we have seen with COVID going on, with people that's supposed to be shut down and in homes or whatever that nature there, and we have had the numbers that we have had. I'm just a little concerned when things do kind of turn back to a sense of normalcy, how will things really look and how will people really react out here. So I want you to be safe, and myself and all of us to be safe out here. We definitely take in all the different things you told us, the precautions to be on the lookout for. And I'm just asking everyone just to continue to watch out for each other. If there's nothing else, I will end this meeting now. Thank everyone for tuning in. Have a good night. God bless.